I am excited today to have Melissa Mosher on the show. Melissa is founder and CEO of Support Savvy, a company that specializes in business and community operations. Melissa helps small businesses with their operational infrastructure set up and support everything from email setups to invoicing, their applicant tracking system platforms, and so much more. However, Melissa is best known for her skills around community building and community moderation. She's been managing, marketing, and moderating online community forums, news groups, and chat rooms for over 25 years. From ICQ, anybody remember that, to the latest in social media platform groups, there's really no end to the ways that we can connect. But where should you start? According to Melissa, the key ingredients are having a solid intent and a strategy that is designed to support and achieve that intent. Melissa, welcome to the Go for Launch podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, and everything in between. Thank you so much, Brandon, for inviting me today. And thanks for all the hard work on this podcast. I know a little bit about the behind the scenes detail, and this is no small lift. So well done.
Oh, thank you so much. We're going to get into how you and I met, which is kind of crazy here in a moment. But I also always start by asking people, where are you in the world today?
Yes, definitely. Where am I? Wherever the internet is. First answer, always answer, wherever there's internet. I am coming to you live from outside of Seattle, Washington. I'm actually over on the Olympic Peninsula now. So I'm equidistant between Victoria, Canada and Seattle, right? We're a little bit in there. So I've been enjoying the Pacific Northwest for a short 18, 19 years, originally from the Midwest, born and raised, but loving the West Coast.
Love it. Lovely. So you and I met, Melissa, it's been what, a couple years now, maybe 3 years. And so the crazy story is maybe about 5 years ago, I started this online community in Slack called Learn Slack. And my intent at the time was to help people that like yourself and myself, who may be solopreneurs or work, a lot of times by yourself. If you're in Slack, it's great, but if you don't have anybody to talk to, it really sucks. So one of my big intents was to create a place where many people could gather and just talk, and commune with one another. And of course, do it around the platform that I built it on, which is Slack. I'm a Slack fanboy. You are a big Slack fangirl. And you joined that a couple years ago. I was at the time still the only moderator, and I was I was a little burnt out. And I remember you got in there and we're poking around and going, "Hey, where is everybody? What's happening? Like, how come this is so quiet in here?" And you started asking all the tough questions. Long story short, you and I kind of hit it off, and I was like, "Hey, you seem to be pretty passionate about this stuff." And you're like, "Yeah, I could totally make this thing much better." And I'm like, "Yeah, oh yeah, why don't you join me as a co-moderator?" And you're like, "Okay." And so we're like,
there we are. Isn't that is so, I have to say, that is so typically me, with patience, love, and grace. It's not that you're doing it wrong. It's just that you're doing it wrong. No, I'm totally kidding.
No, I mean, you're right, because first of all, the thing sort of took a life of its own. It started from scratch. Did very little promotion. I did get listed in some places where you can look for free Slack communities. And lo and behold, over time, this is now over 2,000 members in Learn Slack. So you and I are now managing that effort, which we'll talk about more. But I just wanted to share that with everybody listening, to ensure that you knew that Melissa and I know each other. We've never met in person, but because of the beauty of the internet, of course, now we're on opposite ends of the coast in the US, but we're like best buds. And we have these amazing chats in Slack all the time since we're moderating the thing. But there's so much more to this community building that we're going to get into. So I want to ask you, Melissa, kind of take us back a little bit in time and tell us about your background. How did you get started in business?
I had bills to pay. I woke up one day and I was like, man, I got to have currency to pay for things. No. So I kind of have a split background. And when we met, so to also caveat, we met pre-pandemic, right? So it was a little bit different it's a little bit different world. So I feel like a lot of our stories now are like pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. So more on that Learn Slack community later, but pre-pandemic and career. So I come from marketing and product development and executive operations. What does that mean? I was a corporate stooge, loved it, climbed the ladder. Give me money. I want to do this. And so I've got about 15 years in executive biz operations, focused in product development and marketing. So all those strategy pieces before it gets to the awesomely creative folks like Brandon and his business, right? So we sit back and we talk about everything, and then we haul it off to the people that have creative talent and skill. So having done that, starting as a receptionist, honestly, I dropped out of college to become an executive assistant because, moment of truth, I saw how much money you could make without a degree and the career potential. So that is what got me first hooked into business in terms of this is the field, the trade, the thing that I want to do. Couple that with, I'm a retired gamer, right? I am no good at anything if it doesn't involve a computer. So about 10, 15 years ago, I was a semi-pro gamer, semi-amateur, kind of before Twitch. And I ran a 65-man guild. So we're talking auditions, tryouts, applications, raid calendars, strategy sequences, guild makeup. And so literally I've been managing and promoting the collective efforts of remote teams for 20 plus years, right? All of my raiders and my guildies, my gamers, I don't pay any of them. They are there to join my cause, join the mission, contribute their talent and success. So I took those two things together and I went, okay, the corporate world has these things. I'm old enough to go, stakeholders meetings and those BT conferencing calls and the speaker bridges and the attendee lines and all this other stuff. So I saw what I was doing in the gamer world, because we nerds, we're all kind of like online all the time anyways.
Right.
And I went, let me figure out a way to leverage some of these best practices, tools, techniques in the corporate world. And so that then started to pivot my career into what I call virtual event community productions. All of the apps and strategy and tech and techniques and culture, all that planning stuff behind the scenes.
Okay, so really at the heart of it, you're a total geek, is what you just said, because of the gaming, which is cool. Because a lot of us, get started in business for different reasons. Like I started in web design because I totally geeked out when I started learning about web pages back in the 90s and was like, these are cool. And then at some point I was like, oh, I wonder how you make these. And then I started to teach myself how to do HTML, et cetera. And, long story, boom. Then I started a web design firm a couple of years later. But sounds to me like it was organic for you as well. You were just doing what you're passionate about. You've evolved over time. So you have really gone to the level of now helping people in the corporate side of the world. I would take it, who want to build these communities, do that more. Is that right? With virtual events and other platforms?
Yeah, because we've actually evolved over the last 15, 20 years in multiple ways. It's not just technology and the addition of these new apps, but the way that we work, the way that we talk, the way that we consume information digitally is not the same as our ICQ days, right? Back in 94. We have a whole new world of people that don't know what threading is. I just did a Slack presentation earlier this week, and funny mention, they said that not threading is the new reply all.
Interesting.
And I thought that was so great.
Yeah.
So it was even then going, hey, corporate guys, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
let me help you.
Tell everybody who's like not, below the age of like 40, what ICQ is.
So ICQ was one of the first chat relays. So the very first chat room was IRC, which is Internet Chat Relay. The only reason I wasn't on that one is because I was potty training. Otherwise, I'd have been there. Otherwise, I would have been there. But it was one of the first platforms where back in the day when we had our dial up and our free hour CD that you could connect to quickly, and it was international. So it was the first platform where I got to talk and text in chat rooms and news groups to people on the other side of the planet. And again, we're singing like 94 to 98. That was pretty freaking cool in the middle of Iowa.
Absolutely. Totally. I remember those days vividly, being on all these places like Prodigy, AOL, CompuServe, with
Trillion.
with all your crazy, they didn't have like decent usernames. So you had like a string of numbers, whatever. And so, but it was just like the geeks hanging out with each other, the forward thinkers, the early adopters, whatever you want to call us. But now, now it's passed over into the mainstream. But let's say, Melissa, for somebody's running a company, especially, I guess, consumer goods, they want to have passionate fans. They want to maybe start a community for those fans or customers, and they're thinking about it. What are the key steps that somebody should consider before they even dive into creating an online community?
Yes. Oh, this is such a great topic. And I get this question a lot because folks will come to me to do some community strategy and planning, and they'll go, I don't know what app to use. And I'll always ask, that depends. What's your intent? What are you trying to do? Right.
Okay.
And so taking that first moment, not saying that we need to plan everything out and we have to launch perfectly. We got Brandon for that. He can help you with the launch. But what we can do is we sit and think through what is it that we want from this community? What do we want to bring to it for our members? And what do we want our members to bring and take away from there? Because it's not enough to say, okay, here's this group, here's the value stack, and everybody sign up and dive in. Every group has a value stack. How are we intentionally reaching these folks and engaging them where they're at to produce the activity that we want? Really great example. Somebody asked me, hey, community manager on Slack, hey, I'm struggling to have folks engage with Slack. You know, we tell them how to use it, etc. Right? That's a great example. I asked the question, do they know why they're in the car? You're showing them the blinkers and the wipers and how to use turn signals, but you've got a whole group of folks that are sitting there going, why am I in this vehicle? Right. So taking it back into what are we trying to build? What's the trip we want to go on? What's the destination we want them to land at? And then we'll get to what vehicle app might be the best to get us there on that journey. So starting with some strategic thought.
Yeah. Oh, that is so important. And like you said, a lot of people just go straight to the tools. They see a shiny object, like now it's Clubhouse. Oh, let's go start a Clubhouse, room, and everybody will come to it. And that is often another mistake that I see, that people think, oh, well, if we just build it, they'll come, kind of like Field of Dreams. But that's not the case, is it?
No, not at all. And specifically when it becomes device dependent, right? So I'm seeing folks out here going, oh, I've got to put out Clubhouse. Wait, I don't have an iPhone device. Ooh, let me go buy an iPhone device. Okay, as the business strategist, I'm going to go, was moving to iPhone on your roadmap this year? Was making a new capital investment on your roadmap this year? Do you believe you will have ROI for what you're spending just in terms of device and learning this new app in that Clubhouse community? So on both sides, as a community planner, yes, what app do we use? Where does it go? Do we not get distracted by shiny things? But also as a community member, right? What do I jump to next? Where are my people? I often say, careful of the shiny object squirrels, right? Because we can be feeding and supporting our members, and then something like Clubhouse comes out, which is totally cool. I'm not an Apple person, but like I appreciate the energy and the excitement that this app brings to tech, because I'm excited about tech. But if you're stopping in your business and your roadmap and what you're doing to go, ooh, should I add this? I would say it depends. Were you looking at new platforms this year? Is it on the roadmap to explore parallel or vertical markets? If not, you're probably in shiny squirrel syndrome.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more at length on tools specifically as the conversation ensues. But I want to ask you one thing about when you start a community. I imagine that, you said intent is the first step, right? Really being clear about what that mission is, what people are going to get out of it, because frankly, you should also go ask, your potential community members, if you can, before you do it, and go, what, we're thinking about starting this. What would you like to see out of it? Right? Get some input. Now, of course, you will always get some of the sort of insiders saying, yeah, if you built that, we'll certainly show up and participate. And then you build it and then there's crickets and you're like, wait, I thought you guys said you were going to show up. And so there has to be a lot more to it. But that leads to my second question is, how important is the onboarding process when you start a community and you're ready to go?
That question gives me goosebumps.
Onboarding
is everything. It is everything to me. It doesn't even matter what app it is, right? It's that facilitated journey of getting into the car and understanding while you're there. So this is a great topic. Onboarding is everything. And I mean that at every touch point and step along the way. Why are you joining this community? What are you going to get here? And how do you make the most of it? So a way to sort of adopt that onboarding thinking in the community space, think about if you started a job, like a corporate, in the US W-2 job. You made the offer, right? You signed it. They said, great. Then what happens next when you get a job? Do they just say, okay, your desk is over there and the staff meeting's Friday? No, they probably put you with, they piecemeal it out. Perhaps they give you your benefit information. Then they give you your new hire, culture information. Maybe it's new hire onboarding. Maybe it's swag. Maybe it's,
Mm-hmm.
A brown bag lunch with the other new people, right? So this idea of onboarding, we think because it's virtual that there's not maybe as many touch points, but I would almost argue that we need more meaningful touch points because we're now working with people that are onboarding a ton of tools and groups and communities all over the place. So touching on those excitable ones, yeah, we'll totally build it. I can be one of those people sometimes. They'll learn Slack stuff. I'm totally excited. Now I'm totally excited over here. And now I'm totally excited over here. So when we go to do market research, yes, we want the excited people, but I'll also dig into, I want the emotionally pissed people as well. What are you not getting? Sometimes we start with what you're not getting. That's an easier question for folks to answer. What do you wish you had? What are you missing out on, etc.? Because that can help kind of weed through the excitement, so to speak, because I love everything, if you ask me, on the right day.
Oh yeah, and I'm the same. I've embraced so many different platforms, and when we talk about the tools more, I'll mention one in particular that I love. But I tried to create a community there, and it just completely bombed because no one wanted to go adopt a new tool. So that's one of the problems that we face. But as we stick to this more important conversation about intent leading to, okay, onboarding, getting people into this community. One of the things I find, Melissa, in my experience is the 80-20 rule definitely applies to online communities. In fact, a lot of times I think it's more 90-10 in the sense that either 10 to 20% of the people in a community will generate 80 to 90% of the participation. Do you see that yourself, or is it even worse?
I would say
in some cases?
Oh yeah, it's great. Oops, sorry, I lagged a little.
No.
I would say those are great numbers, and it depends. Those are the numbers in the pond that you're looking at, right? So when we talk about like private clients, I've got a project that we're working on. It is $1,100 a month to be in this membership.
Whoa.
A month, right?
Okay.
But there's only 300 or 400 people in it.
Mm-hmm.
We got like 90% activity, man. Everybody's in there. So I would say it depends on where you're looking. If you're looking into free groups, that's going to have a different demographic and psychographic, right? There's a fun word, than folks that are in a paid community, right? And the same is true like with this onboarding. We can get folks in, here's your value stack, here's the link, and here you go, and we can make the sale. But if we're not serving them once they get in there, we haven't outlined an engagement plan and a moderation scope, let's say, if we're getting super technical, where it says, here is how we're intentionally driving conversation, how we're enabling it, the way to ask questions, the way to come into a conversation and incubate them, how to draw connections between threads and moderation. There's all this kind of like subtle nurturing. In my experience, until you get probably past about 300 excited people, like 300 folks that are like, man, I am so glad I'm here. About that 300 mark is when I see a self-driving conversation kind of uptick, right? So if we're talking just like a general 3. And that's kind of true with even some of the gaming forums, because there's sort of this spectrum that once you get to a level where you've got that, let's say 80% engagement and activity level that you want, right? We have to also plan for incredible success. And what I mean by that is, okay, you've got to that 90%, you got your 500 members, you're at 90% activity rate. They are all going to be amplifying ambassadors, right? So to be prepared for the next level of influx and taking an exponential look at what type of members are we bringing in here? Are we bringing in members that are in 100 different groups and can't keep up? Are we bringing in members that were sold on our awesome marketing, but they're not super invested as a community contributor anyways? Are they active in other groups, right? So drilling down into these demo and psychographics is more than just their economic and their location. What kind of online user are they? I'm in a Slack group that has about 2,500 people, I think, in it right now. And it's all community managers on every platform. It is one of the best groups. I feel like I can't miss out. I need to be in there every day. So for, and it's led by community managers, right? And it's led by a community management team, and they do strategy, all this other stuff. So it's sort of a pleasure to just kind of walk in here and go, I love all of this. Let me just take all of this.
Yeah, well, I love the 300 person sort of bar that you've set, because that should tell a lot of people listening, hey, if you got a small business and you want to start a community, if you don't think you can get that to several hundred people
Mhm.
in fairly short order, you're going to be pushing the rock up the hill potentially, even if you just start a free Facebook group, for example. But to your point, Melissa, those are the groups that I see, like you said, that get into the several hundred, into the couple thousand. They tend to have a life of their own,
Yes.
beyond the
Yes.
moderators, which is awesome. And this is kind of where we want to be with Learn Slack, for example. And
Yeah.
we're grooming some other people in there that are the passionate nerd types like us, that in that case, you also mentioned the fact that free versus paid makes a huge
Mhm.
difference. Yeah, if I'm
Mhm.
paying $1,100, like one of your clients, to be in a group, oh hell yeah, I'm going to be in there participating because I'm shelling out good money, and
Right.
it's there's probably some peer pressure too. Like at that
Right.
level,
Yep.
everybody's like, well, we're all smart people, all paying this money. By God, I'm going to be in here putting my 2 cents in.
Yeah,
Whereas
exactly.
yeah, whereas when you get the free group, you're dealing with free, and free,
Yep.
there's a very low barrier to entry with that. So you could start a Facebook group, you could start a Slack community, you can do whatever you want, but it might be tough to get that 90% of people to get off their butt and do anything, like
Yep.
stuff, comment on stuff, post stuff.
Yeah, depending on their intent, right?
Yeah.
Because I would say with those free groups, and if you are a business owner and you're looking at, hey, I want to have a community group, hit me up. We'll definitely have a chat. But even down to things like, is this designed? So there's 6 different community models. There's way more apps, but they're different models. Is this a warm lead pool? So what I'm hearing, like what we're talking about right now, you and I with the free group and the paid group and stuff like that, is we're referencing one of the community models, which is a warm lead pool.
Mm.
Right. And so the strategy and methods behind that is create a voice, bring everybody into your corral, whether it's Facebook group or Slack group or whatever. And then that becomes almost an exclusive selling channel.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I build my relationship with my folks. Now, depending on the business, the relationship with your customers and your prospects may not be in a group on social media, right? It may be in your email list. So community is not exclusive to forum applications only. Community is you. You build it with a little hustle, heart, and coin. But you could have an email community of 40,000 people, let's say, or even 4,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
When you build that conversation and that intentional engagement over time, whether it's Slack or Discord or Mighty Networks or Disciple or all these things, even with the email and the onboarding, the whole community experience is every digital touch point that you're putting in front of your potential prospects, and where are you nurturing them to get to. If your goal in a group is to have people post and that's it,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody starts posting and you're like, great, my life is complete, the business is good, post cat videos, fastest way to get activity, post cat videos. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
there's got to be some intent to it. And then even taking that one step further, folks are like, well, people are overusing Facebook groups, or is it LinkedIn group versus this versus that? These are 2 of 18 platforms that offer news groups and forums, right? It's the most popular. So what I feel like we've done in terms of trends is we have brought online forums to an entirely new audience that was never in online forums before, right?
Yes.
When
Right.
Facebook and LinkedIn added groups,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those of us that have been in the Reddit feeds for a bazillion years, right? This idea of forum posting features etiquette, I want to like call those 2 parts out a little bit different. So all of
Mm-hmm.
our folks now, yeah, we want to get to the 300. That's almost assuming that they know what forums are, right? Like that's not that big heavy lift, but helping to engage these folks. When we think about our members, it's not just content that we're feeding them, it's thinking about all the content that they're intercepting
Mm.
and taking in on a daily basis. How can I help like reduce that noise and get them to the point where I want them to be?
Yeah, I love that. And you're sort of talking about something that I want to ask about next, which is the amount of work involved in community building. I would say that it takes a lot of time. But I wanted to ask you, because of all your more vast experience on this, how much time would you say you devote to the various communities you support? I mean, this is a full-time job for you, right? But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
does it take, let me ask you a second part and then you can
Yep.
riff on all this.
Awesome.
Do you feel like it takes more time in the beginning of setting a community up, or is it ongoing?
Yeah, these are great questions that you'll hear me go, it depends on the project, right? It totally does. And I'm an analyzer by trade. So I'll also say that because I'll always spend more time in strategy and planning than in execution, almost to my detriment. So for me, I look at it as it's like your business plan, right? Depending on if you got a 15-page business plan or you got a paragraph. To be able to sit and think about how much time, money, energy, and resources do I want to invest in this community, and then how much we gonna pay to help do it. That's like product planning that you would do in your business. How long does it take to do an executive business plan? How long does it take to do product ideation and development? So depending on the complexities. Now, having said that, I do have some benchmarks in my experience where I say it takes a minimum of 8 deep dive strategy sessions in my world. And I do 8. I do onboarding, and I'm not going to have my list in front of me, but we'll share it later. But, everything from onboarding, planning, pricing, audience targets. And I want to touch on that intent piece that I talked about at the beginning, guild charters. So in gaming, we galvanized around our guild charter. That's what you saw when you went to go apply to see if you wanted to raid with me, right? Okay. Here's my expectations for the group. Here's how we collaborate. Here's how we schedule. Here is our mission as a guild. This is the stuff I want to do. If you're not into it, kick rocks, right? Right. And so to be able to go, how do I want to do that? So for me, even personally, in my guild, and I'm sitting here, let's say I want to do gaming. I'm going to spend, let's say an hour talking about or thinking to myself, membership, what kind of raiders do I want? What kind of income, How, what's the engagement? How often do I expect the same team to raid? Do I expect them to post on forums? Just like you would possibly do if you were adding somebody to your team. I'm a solopreneur. Now I'm going to expand out and add people to my team. Well, I'm not just going to start interviewing. I'm probably going to think about what job, that they're, sorry, got a phone ringing. What job that I need them to do. What does my business need in that example? So I'd say to launch or to think about all the parts and pieces, I joke and say it's about 8 hours of solid thinking, and we can go through it segment by segment. But by the end of that, if you can think through the process of each of these individual pieces, it becomes like Legos. Then you go, oh, cool. This is an onboarding piece. I'm going to stick that here. Oh, this app is really cool. I'm going to log that for an engagement idea. And we sort of have a structure that we can start to pin all these amazing ideas to, so that when we are ready to launch, whether it's a soft launch, full launch, or a mega launch, the machine's ready. Right? The car has been tested. We are ready to go. And then it becomes maintenance mode. So that's a really long answer of saying it takes a lot of thinking, but the more you think in advance, the easier the tactical application and management of it becomes.
I love that, Melissa. And I think if people are listening going, wow, that sounds like arduous to go spend all that much time. Listen, trust me, trust Melissa. If you don't spend the time to think it through, like you're saying, think, and really be intentional and plan, then you could set yourself up for some serious disappointment later and you can just waste a ton of time, weeks, months, years trying to build something that no one's going to utilize. I mean, I have seen this at some big levels. I love the Buffer software for social media posting. They went off and started this tangential community using a third-party platform, and it just fizzled out after like 2 years or something. And they were like, eventually said, we're going to pull the plug on this. And it was like, well, no shit, because like I just never went there. Right. That's part of the problem. And I want to spend the last few minutes talking specifically about tools, because that's where people often go first. Like they think, oh, I love Slack, so man, let's just go start a Slack community. Well, of course, you and I are major Slack geeks. And I wouldn't tell people right away, go start a Slack community, because that tends to be the geekier, techno savvy types that, number one, probably already use Slack for various things, whether it's business or otherwise. Because if I'm talking to somebody of a certain age that doesn't even know what Slack is, there's no way in hell I'm going to get them to adopt that and figure out how to use it quickly enough to be useful. Same thing with some of these other platforms. You mentioned Mighty Networks. That was the one I was going to say that I started a community on a couple years ago for what I call co-marketing space. And people that got in there loved it. And they were like, what a great platform. However, the engagement sucked because it was something new and it had a learning curve and people just did not adopt it. Even though the alerts went out and they would see them on their phone or wherever, they wouldn't go in and participate. And it was disappointing. I should have thought that through. And I threw in the towel and ended up moving it to Facebook groups. Bing. So tell us, Melissa, of you said 17 plus, there's probably more,
Right.
but how do people figure out what tool to use and which are your favorites?
Yeah, no, there's like three things in that. So the first one I want to hit on that pinged when you were saying that, onboarding. Doesn't matter what app it is. Onboarding, right? Because I totally agree. It depends on the platform and onboarding. In that experience, things like in the email sequence for onboarding, hey, if you're new to Mighty Networks, check out this video. Hey, once a week, this is a new platform. We're going to do a new platform feature. So being mindful that, yeah, your members are adopting a new layer of technology. That's part of your community management. That's part of the strategy that we would sit and plan through and go, okay, this is a new app, right? Or it's just like we would be in corporate. User enablement, right? We're going to have a new app or a new process inside our corporate structure. So we can do that with off-platform apps as well. So I want to first say, don't be scared about that. You can totally do it. There are resources, partners, folks like us. My personal mission is to make community building less scary, right?
I love it.
Less scary.
Yeah.
Pardon me. And what I mean by that is like even down to Slack. I just did a presentation on this yesterday. It is designed for continuous conversation, right? Slack is searchable log of all conversational knowledge, conversational, river, motion. This is moving through this. So it's not code dependent in terms of, okay, you got to be a developer and you got to know slash commands and whack your way through this, but rather helping our users figure out what the car is for, right? And then how they can best use that vehicle to get to where they want to be. And I used this analogy in my prezo yesterday. It was for administrative assistants.
Okay.
Right. And so if we talk about how techie assistants are, well, I was one and I can write a little code, but then that's not the norm. Right. And so this idea of going, it's not scary. You don't necessarily have to be techie. You do have to have an intentional onboarding and enablement plan, just like if you were doing masterminds and courses. Right. So that's another community piece that folks maybe don't think about off the cuff, is that these mastermind groups. So that one that's like $1,100 a month, that's a mastermind group that goes for 12 months, right?
Okay.
So that's like a course every week in your onboarding, just like if you had signed up for a course at a university, right? They're not just going to take your money and give you a link and say, see you in class, right? There's going to be lessons and curriculum planning and all of these other things. So I want it to be less scary. Yes, there's a lot in there, but there's folks like me, folks like Brandon, and the folks in the Learn Slack community, the idea of figuring out what our members need and then helping them get there. That may be user enablement and learning a tool. But you're right. I'm totally Slack biased because I've been on Slack since 2013 and got to be a part of some of the beta projects. And then I was involved with a corporate project. And at the time, we grew the third largest open source Slack community. So I feel like Slack got a lot of, it's for techies at the beginning.
Yeah.
But now, as we're seeing this increase in community and remote work, right? Businesses, not everybody can afford Microsoft Teams. Not everybody needs a full enterprise deployment. So Slack is starting to offers opportunity for people to do those types of sophisticated workspaces, sophisticated news groups, as I call them, at a price point that reaches, that fits their business. So we're seeing it from professional groups. We're seeing it in masterminds. We're seeing it in hobby groups. We're seeing it, in all of these different avenues, because folks are already on it in a lot of ways for their day job. It's anonymous to the extent that when I'm in Slack, you don't know what I'm posting on my Facebook page, and that one's kind of like, so you've got some of that, off-platform anonymity. But at the end of the day, where are you spending the most time? If you are a social media person and you're in Facebook every single day, but then You're like, well, do I have to learn these other 10 platforms? It depends. If your Facebook groups aren't feeding you, right? You might have to go to another grocery store if they don't have the supplies. But it's not the case that we just have to add all of these on and be on all of these different platforms. That's like, it's hard for me to split my brain between user and a community manager, right? It's like this idea of like, well, which app is it? Which community do I want to join? I kind of go back and forth between all of these, but I like Slack. Of course I do. Because of its mobile device, but because of its personal productivity and integration features, right?
Yeah.
So it helps folks learn how to thread messaging and stuff like that. But you can also leverage that for so much more than chat. That said, Mighty Networks, I've seen some great off-platform forums and use cases there. And what I mean by off-platform is not on social media, right? So
Right.
there's a growing trend, good, bad, or indifferent, of folks that want social media for their social media, right? But let's use an example of a domestic violence group, right? On Facebook, I'm less likely to post in a domestic violence group because my picture and my whole life is going to show there, and they go, oh, she's posting in domestic violence group. I wonder if her boyfriend's beating her, right? Like, you know what I mean? So there's there's a whole world that's moving off of social media for certain topics. And in fact, I'll even go one step further and say most of my current clients, only 2 of them even have a Facebook presence, and they are weak at that.
Okay. That's a great point. I didn't think about that. Thank you for bringing that up, Melissa, that things like Mighty Networks or Slack are, as you said, off platform. They're sort of separate and independent. So if somebody is worried about their, personal social media usage being exposed somehow, and frankly, a lot of big companies search this stuff, right? So
they absolutely
do.
do.
So that's a great point. If you're going to be off in the Discord or the Twitch or the Slack or wherever else,
right,
you're probably a little bit, you can be more anonymous, and you can be probably more confident knowing that what you're doing over there is not going to be exposed. So that's a great thing to think about. But again, goes back not only to the intent of starting a community, but thinking through issues like that. Like to your point, if you're dealing with a very sensitive topic, then maybe you don't go straight to Facebook groups, right? And in my case, I also love LinkedIn, but I would say LinkedIn groups kind of suck. They used to be good. And for whatever reason, LinkedIn has sort of dialed their algorithms to the point where groups kind of got deprecated. They're not as useful. Now, maybe that'll come back, the pendulum will swing back the other way. But for now, I'm like, there's no way.
And all I can do is point at community management. Doesn't matter which group it is, on what platform it is.
Yeah.
The hosts that are managing those LinkedIn groups, they're potentially not understanding the platform. They don't have an engaging content plan. They're not leveraging how the platform works to best feed their goals, right? They're just going, here's a group. Okay, there you go. And so which really inspired me to think about it like a car. Like I use this as this car example a lot because chat rooms are vehicles. Forums are vehicles. That whole river, it's motion. It is not the case that you're going to log into a Slack group or Mighty Networks or whatever the platform is. Let's say it's been going for 2 years. You are not going to go read 4,500 messages, ladies and gentlemen. It is not a lake. It is not an archive vault of everything that you have to eat, right? So I use the car a lot. Trying to figure out which app is our favorite is like walking up to a car dealership and going, I want a vehicle today.
Yeah.
Okay, spinning the wheel, they all qualify, right?
Yeah.
Like, do I need to haul stuff? Do I have kids? Do I need a minivan? Do I need 4-wheel drive? Do I want to look cool in red? Do I want my payments to be da-da-da? So all of these factors that you think about when deciding or thinking about buying a car, apply those to your community idea as well. Do I need people to pay? Do I need to sign up? Do I need to filter membership? Right? Touching back to that inactivity piece. I'm going to guess and go out on a limb and say that LinkedIn groups that aren't good has probably nothing to do with the platform that is sitting on in the LinkedIn infrastructure and everything to do with the group host. All right, I made a group.
Yeah. I mean, they do take a lot of work. And unfortunately, like I said, LinkedIn is not as good as Facebook group because first of all, more people go to Facebook more often, obviously. But if you are dealing with a business topic, to your point, and you were going to invite a group in, and maybe they're paying for your mastermind or something, and you say, you know what, we're going to run the mastermind weekly meetings or notes or something, and we're going to do it in a LinkedIn group. And the only
Mhm.
people that'll get in this group are the ones that are paying us the money.
Right.
That
Right.
could be one use case, for example.
Right.
But
Well, LinkedIn itself is a different use case than Facebook.
of
So I
course,
even have to call that out too, is going, there are more people on Facebook than LinkedIn. It depends what more on is, right? Because I post nothing on LinkedIn. Me personally, my
hmm,
LinkedIn is my black book. That
okay,
is my Rolodex.
okay,
That is a mini version of my resume, and that's about it, right?
yeah,
Because that's where you go to find out who I've worked with, what I've done. That's kind of my little, professional storefront. I do not go into much user groups for LinkedIn. Why? Because my execs play there, my clients play there. I'm not posting my stuff. They're not paying me for my political ideas, right? They
yeah,
are paying me to get the job done. If they want to see the next side of me, or that, okay, we're super professional now, let's go to the real one, great, go to Facebook, and then you can see more about me on that. And so what that taps into, again, my community, I have it segmented by the right tool for the right job. I do not put the same content out on every platform. So for me, LinkedIn is all about one-to-one connections, DMs, and I'll scroll my feed and give you an update. It's more of a consumer platform for me. It is not an outbound. Not to say that it's good, bad, or indifferent, just to point out that the users on the platform are different. So they're going to have different behaviors. They're going to have different trends. The folks on Facebook are just louder, noisier. They're the emotional tops and bottoms, right?
yeah.
Those that are most excited to talk about or the most pissed off.
Yeah, you're right. LinkedIn typically, thank God, is still very professional for the most part. And you're not going to see people posting random personal stuff on there, what they have for lunch or their political views, because they know like this is not the place for that.
Right, right.
But I would encourage you, and we can have a whole conversation about that later. But in terms of LinkedIn, it's a great place to post
It did.
your professional stuff that you're working on because that's how people can discover you there. But that's a whole other topic. But we have covered a lot of ground. I want to wrap this up and land the plane. Melissa,
I love
this has
that.
been tremendous information for anybody thinking about starting a community. You've given us some great ideas in terms of the intent and the sort of benchmarks that you need to think about and how much effort you need to put in, especially the planning stage.
Mhm.
So, where can people learn more about you and get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about community building?
Yes, I love this. So website's currently under development because we are pivoting to more community ops and build, but it is supportsavvy.com. And you can also join me in my group, my free group, the forum on Facebook will be launching in May. And we're going to be talking about, there's going to be a lot of this nerd riffing stuff that we take into these next level strategy ideas and to help give you some tools and tips to get
Okay.
started and to move you through that. So that's called the forum on Facebook.
All right. Well, I'll link back into this on the show notes page once you get that up and running. Melissa, it's been so much fun. By the way, you can join us also in Learn Slack.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
just go to learnslack.com, there's a little invite field and you can put your thing in there. And when you get in there, you'll see some onboarding, but also we'll say hi and we'll be happy to chat with you about Slack or anything else community building related. Well, thanks so
Fantastic.
Melissa. Thanks again. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon.